up, everybody? Welcome to the Simply People podcast. My name is Dax. I will be your host this evening or morning or afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. And this is season 1, all about the magic of generosity. I'm here with Todd Thacker, the founder of Simply People. Todd, how are you feeling?
Dax, I'm great. Had a super fun time in episode 1 about the magic of generosity. Excited
Absolutely.
for today.
Come on. Yeah, so episode 1, I'm hoping you guys listened to it. If you didn't, you need to go back. We talked about sort of the transformative power of generosity, how giving literally transforms the human heart, and got a lot of inspiration there. And in the name of that, we're actually going to talk about, in this episode, today's episode, is all about listening to the whisper, to that nudge when you know you should give, when you know God is calling you to give. Maybe there were times during episode 1, like me, sitting here, feeling convicted and feeling like I actually know how I can be more generous. Or maybe even thinking examples of maybe that was God whispering to me last week. Maybe that was the nudge. Maybe I ignored it. Maybe I missed out on an opportunity. Right. So today we're going to make that a little bit more practical. What is it like hearing that nudge, hearing that whisper? So Todd, I just want to ask you right off the gate, do you often feel like God is nudging you to give? And what is that nudge like?
Yes. Today I do. Okay. I wouldn't say that I did, and maybe I always have, but I wasn't aware of it before. Today I'm aware of it. And for me, and you said like a nudge to give. Yes. But again, I really want to start off strong that it's not about money. Money's an aspect of generosity, but it's more making myself available. We talked a little bit last week about being interrupted, allowing myself to be interrupted, giving my time, giving my talent. Like, I'm a businessman and have a lot of experience. I mentor a lot of kids. That's a way of generosity. So totally. It's open as I've been down this journey. And you know what? For you out there, I was early 50s before I really started to have an understanding of what leading a generous life was and the opportunities that there are for us to actually lead a generous life and with our hearts, with our time, with our talent, and with our resources. And that truly that it was more transformative than just giving. Giving, it was a one and done, and this is more has actually radically changed me and changed my life.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I do think the biggest thing that we should talk about in this episode really is that generosity, it's an attitude, it's a perspective, it's a mindset. It could be sacrificing your time, talents, treasures, the 3 T's. So with that being said, when you feel called to be generous, we'll say, what is that like? What is that nudge? What is that whisper? It seems that over time, even with prayer in general, you can start to understand more, discern God's voice.
Right.
But how did you grow that? How did you grow in your understanding of that?
I think I grew in my understanding by actually taking a little bit of risk. And when I would feel something and not be sure, and then hearing stories of other people, and the craziest story that I've ever heard, I heard at church, and it was a guest pastor. And he was talking about, and then this happened in his church, and it was a woman who felt that God never used her, and God was using other people. And she's driving home from the service, and she's pulling closer to a gas station, and she's feeling this call to go into the gas station. Now, this sounds crazy, and do a headstand by the soda machine, the Coke machine. And so she's like, okay, that's the stupidest thing I've ever thought of in my life. I don't even know why I'm thinking of that.
Yeah.
And so she drives to past the gas station. And as she keeps going, the farther and farther and farther she gets away from the gas station, this urge keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So finally she makes a U-turn. She's like, I can't even believe I'm doing this. And she goes back, and it's like a few minutes before the gas station closes. When she gets there, there's no one there. She's kind of happy. The little bell rings when she opens the door. There's no one out in the convenience area or whatever. She sees the Coke machine. She goes over. She pops up, does a headstand, comes back down, and then standing looking at her is a guy who is the attendant who actually had a gun in his hand. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. She sees the gun, and he's like, I'm so sorry that he goes, don't worry about the gun, but I need to ask you, why did you just do a headstand everything's good, but why did you do that? And she said, I don't really know. I was driving by here, and I just felt this overwhelming urge that that I was supposed to come in and do a headstand. And I passed by and I came back and it kept going. And he said, well, an hour ago, I prayed to God that if someone did not come into this gas station and do a headstand by the Coke machine, that I was going to kill myself. And it was 5 minutes to 9. No one had come in. So I was back in the back when I heard the bell ring when you walked in the door, getting the gun ready. And it was just like, that is like the craziest thing. But the point of that is, and what I found for myself, things that don't make any sense to me doesn't mean that I'm still not being nudged or asked to go and do. And what I've learned is when I've tried to evaluate it for myself, I'll miss an opportunity.
Yeah, that is good. So how you identified it there or retold the story, she said that she had this overwhelming urge.
Yes.
And so maybe she used those exact words, maybe she didn't. But I can even relate to that when you say that. It does seem that like as we go about our lives,
Right.
as we walk, there is sometimes we have some urge. We have this idea that is random. That's like, where is that coming from?
Right.
Like, what? And then it seems that the danger is maybe we overthink that, and maybe we so much so that we ignore it. Or that's not rational. That doesn't make sense.
That's right. That's right. And I think for me, I have a super simple example where I actually did that and I missed an opportunity. I felt the nudge. I was on an airplane. I travel a fair amount with my job, and I was in the very front row. And front row, all your bags have to go up. And this was a few years ago, and there was a very attractive woman in the window, and she was about half my age, and she had a small like backpack size bag that I knew was going to have to go up. So when I was putting my bags up there, I'm like, okay, there's still room for her bag. So I sit down, I'm on my phone doing some texts or emails or something like that. And then all of a sudden I feel the urge, the nudge, the whatever.
The nudge, yep.
It's like, Todd. And it was like, Todd, you need to put the lady's bag up. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I almost, seriously, Dax, probably 80% of the flights I'm on, I will be the first one to jump up and put someone's bag up for them. So that wasn't something that I'm not used to doing. But I looked at the woman. Again, she was very attractive. It was a small bag. She seemed perfectly capable. She was fishing stuff out of her bag. And I'm like, I don't want to think I'm hitting on her. There's no real reason for me to offer to put her bag up for her. So anyway, I'm still on my phone. I moved my legs back so she could walk in front of me. And all of a sudden, you know how like someone's lurking and you're like, wait, what's going on? And so I look up and there she is. And I'm like, oh, excuse me. Can I help you with the bag? And right as I say that, is she flings it up with one arm and she goes, no, that's okay. But I only have one good arm. And I said, I'm so sorry. I owe you an apology. I said, I felt like I was supposed to help you put the bag up, and I didn't listen to it. And, my intent was right. I didn't want her to think I was hitting on her. I didn't, it wasn't that I didn't want to help. I just was like kind of evaluating it. I felt the nudge, but then I was evaluating it based on my understanding of what was going on and missing a broader understanding that God had.
Yeah. And she was like, well, thank you for thinking about offering to help me.
Actually, what I did say is that I'll get the bag down for you when we land.
That's nice. That's nice.
Which we did. But I learned a really important thing, because I would have, like I said, I'm always jumping up. I will tell you the first time that I really can really remember where the nudge was a big deal. And I was driving up to Bayside, our church, and I was on a bridge crossing the river, and I heard like, Todd, you need to open your home to Thrive Leadership students. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And I knew our church. I had done a mission trip to Nigeria, and one of the girls that was on the team, she was going to be in the Thrive program. It was the first year. And basically what it was for college students to come and intern at the church. And they did some internships, they did some college work, etc. And so, but being a home opener, I had no clue what that meant. So I'm like, okay, I need to follow up with Hannah. But the whole way to church, that was the only thing in my mind. And I got to church, we had a guest speaker. Well, our pastor is often gone in August. And if we have a guest speaker, he's definitely gone. And before the guest speaker comes out, our head pastor comes out and he's like, I'm like, what's he doing here? And he's like, before I introduce our guest speaker, I need your help. Thrive Leadership School starts a week from tomorrow, and we need people to open their homes, especially for guys. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
now the only thing that was on my heart, the only thing in my mind on the way to church was I needed to do that. So that I did go out after the service and I filled out the paperwork and I turned it in. I said I could take 2 or 3 kids because I had a 5-bedroom home and my kids, my youngest one had just left, was leaving to go to college. And the woman I gave it to, she said, "Oh, so you could take 2 or 3 kids?" I said, yes. And as I gave it to her, I said, yes. And I kept walking. And she said, "Do you want to talk about it?" And I said, "No." And I kept walking. And the reason I kept walking, and I think this is important for everybody to get, is say yes and move on. And don't give yourself the opportunity to talk yourself out of it. Because I feel that if I had stayed and talked to that person, I would have gotten enough information that I would have been able to rationalize, nope, Todd, this is not what you should be doing. And ultimately, I talked a little bit in the first episode that one of the guys that moved into my house, his brother was a heroin addict. I did find that out after I agreed to, before he moved in, but if I had known that beforehand, I probably would never have done it.
And God knew that too. He's like, I'm not going to let Todd know all the information because he'll probably say no.
Right.
Yeah.
Ultimately, today, what I would even say is that God used Thrive to get the Thrive kids in the front door so he could get Chad, the heroin addict, in the back door. But again, that was me listening. And so as I started having more things where I would say yes and see the fruit of it, I guess, Dax,
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, this is kind of fun to know, like I said last time, that I feel a lot of times, almost every day, I can put my head on the pillow and know that God used me today. Well, if I pull myself out of the game every time because I'm evaluating the circumstances myself or not listening to the nudge, then I'm going to miss opportunity. So now, honestly, I'm almost selfish because I try to say yes, even if it doesn't make sense, because I really don't want to miss opportunity, and it's pretty fun to be used.
Totally. Yeah, and I super appreciate. We could go all day with stories about the urge, about a whisper, because you've been able to sort of adopt this perspective and see this a lot. I think something that, first of all, I was one of those students in that college program who got to live with Todd for a couple of years. So your generosity helped me be here today. I super appreciate that. Thank you for being obedient. And when it comes to the nudge, though, there might be some people listening that are like, I don't know that it's all that clear to me, though.
Right.
Do you always feel like there has to be a clear supernatural nudge? Or do you give sometimes where you're like, no, there was no really nudge or whisper. It just made sense. So like, why not?
Yes, I think that it can be that. And to the extent that it's a nudge or I'm not sure what to do, I kind of try to evaluate it. Is it a positive thing? Is it future? Is it, based in love and action? And if I stopped to evaluate it or had to understand every time, I would miss a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know. The lady on the airplane, I missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
I had a thing a couple weeks ago. This is kind of interesting, where I had a delayed response. I go to a coffee shop, mentor a lot of kids. I'm there a lot, and so probably 3 mornings a week. And over the course of 6 months, I know who's in the coffee shop and who's not at 7:00 in the morning or whatever. And I saw this guy that was in the coffee shop, and he was always had a book, was doing different things. He looked like a medical guy. He had his scrubs on, etc. And anyway, thought nothing of it. And then one day I'm in there meeting with a kid, and then all of a sudden I just saw this guy. His name was Pete, and I saw Pete, and I didn't know his name. But anyway, I saw him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm supposed to talk to him. But I was in the middle of a conversation with someone, and I'm like, he's here every day, so I don't need to do it now. So the next day or, day or two later, I was in there and Pete was in there, and I had that same nudge, like, you need to talk to him. And again, I was with someone and we were in the middle of a conversation. So it's like, no, it'll, I'll see him another time. And then the third time I was coming in and he was coming out, and we walked right by each other. And I heard Todd, this is your chance to, introduce yourself or whatever. Nothing happened.
Wow.
I didn't do it. And so in the next 3 or 4 weeks that I was in there, in fact, I even told Angie, I'm like, I think I missed an opportunity because this guy never came back. And I was just like, whoa, I felt for 3 times that I was supposed to talk to him. And I did not allow myself to be interrupted. And so I missed it. So then I'm meeting with a kid and 3 or 4 weeks later, and boom, Pete comes in. And I say to the kid, I said, you see that guy over there? I said, if he tries to leave before we're done, I just need you to know that I need to get up and talk to him. So sure enough, he sat for 45 minutes or whatever. We were still talking and he goes, get up. And I got up and I met him, before he got to the door. And I said, excuse me, I just want to introduce myself. I said, I don't know if you have faith or whatever, but I've seen you in here a lot. And I said, I have a strong faith. And I just felt that I'm supposed to come up and introduce myself and, at least do that. And he's like, well, my wife and I have come to church and started to go to church and, thank you for doing it. And we had an interesting conversation for a couple of 3 minutes. And then he's like, Todd, I got to go to work. I'd love to talk to you more, and so we exchanged phone numbers. I texted him later in the day and just said, it felt like a divine appointment and it was good to meet you. He texted me back. He goes, I can't believe I met you today. I was going to a doctor appointment with my wife. She's in an emergency C-section right now.
Wow.
My daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, had an appendicitis surgery the week before and it got inflamed. So now she's in emergency. Okay. My life's falling apart. And just knowing that God sent someone over to talk to me had a big difference in my day. And, I just wrote him back that, in all things, not some, God works for good. And
yeah.
And so now we've met a few times and it just worked out. But there was opportunity where I knew I was feeling the nudge and I allowed myself to be busy and missed it. So wow. I think I think it's individual to everyone, how they feel it and hear it. And it's like a muscle, I think. You have to start to nurture it and exercise it.
Yeah.
And just by starting to say yes, and, I've kind of wiped my filter out when I'm talking to someone and just let it flow. And at this point, I'd rather err on getting it wrong where it maybe wasn't a nudge or opportunity than actually miss opportunity that God may have had for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, what struck me in that story is I love that it sounded like you were disobedient. You didn't respond the first few times. But that just shows that you don't need to put all this pressure on yourself to perfectly hear the voice every single time. If you're afraid, like, man, I missed an opportunity to give, don't beat yourself up.
Right.
Our God is graceful. He's patient. He knows that you're fallible. You're not perfect. And so just that he gave you multiple opportunities. So just like the people listening right now, don't be so obsessively stressed that you're just going to miss one thing and God is never going to use you again. Oh my
gosh, yes.
Not at all.
Yes. And I think I've looked at those missed opportunities. I remember getting off the freeway one time and I saw a guy who's holding a sign and there's a lot of that. But this time I felt the call, the nudge, and I was busy and I was going to be back that way in 15 minutes. So I got off the freeway so I could go right by it again. Boom, the guy was gone. And I felt like a missed opportunity. But again, I don't think God's not there to beat us up or whatever. He's trying to get us to be aware, trying to allow us to be interrupted. And so if you miss opportunity, no big deal. What I did is learn from it. Same thing, like the lady at the airport or in the airplane, that was a reminder, don't evaluate it based on my understanding of the circumstances. And, what we talked a little bit about last week when I was giving the money in Chicago and the guy yelled at me and went totally different than what I thought it would.
Yep.
But God was reminding me it's about obedience. So it's not our job to get it right or wrong. I think necessarily it's more about to develop that relationship and be open to being used by God. And I wasn't even aware. Honestly, Dax, I just had no clue that God would want to use me. And I think that's the point of this and everything that's come from a shift in my perspective of, trying to live a more generous life and trying to pursue those avenues as opposed to the world's definition of success. It's, it was a wake up call for me, and, it's super exciting. And one of the things with Simply People is we do want to empower people. We want to help make generosity an inherent aspect of lives, because what we've found in the people that are joining us on this, it's exhilarating. And it's just it's a really cool way of life. And it's there for everyone. And it's small acts, and it's listening to the nudges. I'd say they're whispers. Again, one of the things I said last week, I do believe it's Satan's the one that's jumping up and down and screaming, and that's on God. So if we miss the opportunity, you know what? I'll bring another one back.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I do feel that it's almost like a quiet whisper when God is speaking to us. These nudges. I think you said something specific. You said when it's God, it's positive, it's future, it's loving. Tell us more about that voice, because I do think it's contrasting. It is spiritual warfare. On the one hand, we get nudges, maybe from our flesh.
Right.
In another realm, we get nudges from the enemy, and then also God. So we discern. So you said something very practical. If it's a nudge, if it's a whisper that's positive, future, loving, can you expand on that?
Sure. So again, for me, for Todd, trying to figure out when is it God and when is it not? And it can be with generosity, but it can be a lot of things. It can be responding, how do we respond to a difficult situation? Which actually responding in a healthy way, forgiveness, not judging. Honestly, I would say that these are elements of generosity that I would never have expected to be an aspect of generosity. So, sometimes we have, I believe that there's an inherent opportunity in all of our circumstances. I also believe you can't be a victim and chase that inherent opportunity. And too often, I think we have a knee-jerk response to my situation. We can become defensive and this and that. So what I've tried to do, and that's where the positive. So I try to look at thoughts that are positive, so we know what positive thoughts are.
Sure.
Future, we can't change the past. We can learn from it, but we can't change it. So positive, future, and then constructive. Constructive is learning from mistakes. So constructive is, oh my gosh, the lady on the airplane, I missed the opportunity. Now, my intent was pure. My intent was good, but I missed the opportunity. Okay. So, Todd, even when your understanding is good and well thought out, doesn't mean that should necessarily trump an urge that you have. So that's now constructive. It's God's not beating me up. I'm not, like whatever. Versus I think a negative approach would be, dude, you missed that. You're never going to be used again. That I don't think that's how it works personally. So positive, future, constructive, and then love. Things are love-based. And so for me, I believe that I think this is a super practical thing for all of us. Those are thoughts, I believe, that flow from God. And most of the other stuff is noise that is trying to distract us, trying to allow us not to be interrupted, trying to convince us that we're not smart enough, we're not good enough, or whatever, to do whatever we think the nudge is asking us to do. All of that.
Yeah. I love that. Again, I think it's really practical as you go about your life and you feel a thought, a nudge, a whisper, whatever you want to call it, that's positive, that's loving. Servant-hearted came to mind too, as well as like any opportunity to serve someone,
right?
Whether that's being kind, helping with a bag, something like that. I mean, it's hard to imagine Jesus being like, "Oh, really? You just had to serve that person? You had to do that thing? I didn't tell you to do that."
Right?
Like, no, that's not our God. So, and also you're going to learn along the way. Maybe you do think that God is calling you to do something, and maybe the outcome isn't what you thought.
Right.
That doesn't mean God didn't call you to do it.
Right.
So as long as be obedient, seek Him. Yeah.
Right. No, I was going to say is I think even when we have a good understanding what God's calling us to do, we have a really good opportunity that we have a limited understanding, even if we have a good understanding.
Yeah.
I had a situation in Nigeria, and it was the second year I went, and the first year was such a really cool experience. And then my then 16-year-old daughter's like, Dad, we're going next summer, no questions asked. So I went a second time. And I knew what I was getting myself into, and everyone was so happy. People always say they're going to come back, but they never do. So when I showed up again, it was just like, it was really, really an amazing experience. So one day they asked us, they had an old clinic that had a fire, and they wanted to clean out the attic in that, or not the attic, the back area that had not, the storage,
storage
area that hadn't been cleaned out yet. So they're like, we were going to create a relay for our team, and then the Nigerians would sort through what they wanted to keep and what they wanted to throw away. And I said, I'll go in the back. And it was, the leaky roof. So it was dank, musty in there. They brought me a mask and gloves. So if Nigerians are bringing a mask and glove, it's not a very good, because they're used to working without those things.
Yeah.
It's not a very good situation. I go back in there, and the shelves are decomposing. I am getting coated. Seriously, it looked like I dipped myself in powdered sugar. And I am pulling all this stuff out, and I'm looking at it. This is crap. There is nothing worth saving, and I have a really crappy attitude. And I don't really care. It's like, this is a stupid project, and I know my heart's not in the right place, so I'm getting no credit for this. Whatever. So I was arguing with God the whole time, which honestly, I think arguing with God's not a bad thing, because it's what I was feeling, and to share it, there's an intimacy in that. But the next day, so we got it all done, and it was something that they had been trying to get done forever, and we were there and did it. They did pull some things out to save, threw away the rest. And the next day, we're in a staff meeting, and I'm still thinking this was a stupid project. And one of the guys at the very end raised his hand. He says, I just want to call out the Bayside team. Look what they modeled for us. They did a job that none of us wanted to do. No one complained. They didn't know about me. But no one complained. They did a job that none of us wanted to do, and la, 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 la. And it was like, oh my gosh, I was so self-absorbed in my understanding of what it was about. And here it was that God was using it. God was using our act of generosity to encourage this whole group of people to look for opportunities in their own lives to do what we had done, and that we'd come from America, and it wasn't beneath us to go do it. And so it was, it was a very, very interesting thing. And again, I've learned a lot, and that even when I feel the nudges, and that's why I try to say yes and would rather err on responding to nudge as opposed to not, because that's a perfect example of a situation that was completely different than what Todd thought it was about. And yet Todd learned a really good lesson. And honestly, the whole time I was arguing with God, I knew I was going to lose, but it was really cool to see. And it broadened my perspective about how generosity can be used in a lot of different ways to impact people.
Yeah, so this episode has been about listening to the whisper when generosity calls, listening to the whisper, the nudge, the call of God to be generous. And I just want to say, I'm going to give you the final word of encouragement as we wrap this up. But I did want to also say, I think something that has stuck out to me, also seeing you living your personal life, my own experience. When I'm closer to God, when my spiritual disciplines are more active, when I'm reading the Bible, when I'm spending more time praying, it does seem that allows me to discern the voice of God even more in those whispers, because a lot of that is, it forces you to slow down. We live in a fast, distracting, loud world. And so a lot of it is just building habits of take time every day to just sit with God, even if it's just 5 minutes in the morning, sit with him and just listen for the whisper. Maybe you hear something, maybe you don't. Just ask God, how can I be generous on this walk, in this coffee shop, grocery shopping, whatever it is. And so Todd, what encouragement would you give to the person listening right now who feels like God is nudging them to be generous in some way, but they're not sure if it's from God, and or they're kind of afraid of obeying that?
I would say that, again, I think it's really, truly about obedience. And, and I do believe we live in a spiritual world and that there's spiritual warfare. And so it's those thoughts that I'm not good enough, I'm not going to say the right thing, how can I make a difference? There's all these different thoughts that can go through your head to stop you. And I go back to when I, with the Thrive students and turning in the application, and I gave her the application, I kept walking because I knew if I stopped, it'd be too easy to talk myself out. And, 15-minute ride to church, the only thing in my head is Thrive Leadership School that I didn't even know what that meant. And then the head pastor comes out and say, we need people to open their house, especially for guys. And I'm just like, okay, I don't really know what's going on. So that's a pretty clear example. But what I would say is if you're feeling the nudge, you're feeling the urge, if God's asking us to do something, God's gone before us. That's what I've learned. And if God's gone before us, then we already have everything we need. And if we live in a spiritual world, then if we get distracted or we let these doubts, etc., stop us, then what I found, that's when I'm the one missing opportunity. And the story I told about Pete, I missed the opportunity because I didn't allow myself to be interrupted. And then I did allow myself to be interrupted to go talk to him, which actually was beneficial to him. And honestly, the kid that I interrupted, how cool for him to get to see me go act on in the moment what God was putting in my heart. And it was, the second he walked in the door, it's like, oh crap, sorry. I have to do this. And this is important, but so is that. And so I think all those different things, we can talk ourselves out of it so easily. And I would start small. It's, opening your house, I guess, could be perceived as a big thing. But honestly, I had a kid come up to me. I had a bunch of the Thrive kids at the house. And he's like, I don't really know you, but I feel like you're supposed to pray for me. So I stopped what I was doing and we walked in the other room, not where everyone was. And I'm like, dude, what's your name? I didn't even know his name. And so, but I allowed myself to be interrupted and I came alongside the kid and ended up mentoring the kid and whatever. So I think the most practical thing is it's a yes. It's about obedience. And God's not going to ask us to do anything harmful or whatever. And we may get different responses, which I've tried to highlight some of the negative responses that I've gotten. But those were opportunities that I think God was using for me to grow and to, not reward, but to help me see where I got it right. And then to lovingly help me see in a constructive way that I got it wrong. And again, I would go back to when you're feeling it, test it. Is it positive? Is it future? Is it constructive? Is it love? And then I believe you can have pretty good confidence that whatever the ask is there is coming from God. And it's just a step. And what I've learned is just a step. It can be a word. It can be, it doesn't have to be a big thing. And that becomes that first step. How'd the guy get to the top of Mount Everest? One step at a time. And so for this, I would encourage you, look for an opportunity today. I believe that everyone that crosses your path today, there may be an opportunity there. And, and it could be as simple as we talked about last week, is just greeting someone on the street or greeting someone before you ask them for your latte or whatever it is.
Yeah. Just take the step.
Yep.
I love that. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening to episode 2 of The Magic of Generosity. Make sure to follow Simply People on all social media platforms. Links will be in the description below. And Todd and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening. See you soon.